We got like
Okay, so listen up. These are notes number 6. So these are the last section of the notes for factoring, so the blue unit. We are going to, listen up guys. We're going to have a quiz Friday over factoring, and I'm going to let you use this reference sheet. So what that means is I would make sure I'm taking pretty good notes, because you're going to be able to use this on the quiz Friday. Okay? This explains all the types of factoring, and it takes you through the process of how you figure out which way to factor. Okay? So this will all be reviewed. So if you've been absent, pay attention, because this is going to help, guys. This is going to help you figure out parts that you may be missing or you may not have been here for. Okay, so first step at the very top. Step 1. You always factor out the what first. GCF, as I said a ton of times. You always factor out the GCF first, the greatest common factor. Okay, and we're going to look at a couple examples. So if I look at example 1, what's the GCF of 2x cubed plus 8x squared minus 12x? 2x. So I bring a 2x. Okay. Look at what's left. I started with 2x cubed. I took out a 2x. I'm left with x squared. 2 times what gives me 8? The 4. And I started with x squared, and I took out an x. So it's 4x. Minus 6. Okay. You always do the GCF first if you can. Always look for that. Again, you will have this on the quiz Friday, so you'll be able to look at these. Yes?
You have
yes. Okay, number 2. Let's look at number 2 real quick. 36a squared b squared minus 12ab. So 36, I know, rar, as my 2-year-old would say. Okay. No, he doesn't say it like that. That would be creepy. Okay, so GCF, example 2, 36 and 12. What's the GCF for 36 and 12? 12? Yeah, you look at your exponents, or your variables. They both have an a and b. You pick the lowest exponent. So a to the first, b to the first. 12 times what gives you 36? 3. I started with a squared, b squared. I took out an a and a b. So I'm left with just an a and b.
And then minus 1, right?
Yep. And then the last term, 12ab times what gives you negative 12ab. You have to put a negative 1 there. So GCF, we did it a couple weeks ago. Always look for that first. So that's step 1. Sometimes you won't have a GCF, which is fine. If you don't, just move on to step 2. Step 2, what type of polynomial? We're looking in the middle arrow. What type of polynomial is it? How many terms does it have? So we have 3 choices. If there's 2 terms, we're going to look at the left. If there's 3 terms, we're going to look at the middle. And if there's 4 terms, we're going to look at the far right. Okay? So this helps you decide if there's 2 terms, 3 terms, or 4 terms. Then you can kind of do it that way. So if there are 2 terms, these are the questions you ask yourself. Is it a difference? Which means, do I have what? Subtraction. Okay? So you can put subtraction there. Is it a difference? Am I subtracting? And can I write both terms as something squared? Are they perfect squares? Okay, we did this a couple weeks ago, so that's why we're kind of reviewing it. But those are the 2 things you have to look for. So if I look at example 5, let's look at example 5. I have 2 terms. There's not a GCF. So I say, okay, can I write each term as something squared? So you may have to write it like this if you can't see it in your head. What squared gives me 25q squared? 5q. And then the second term, what squared gives me 4v to the 4th? V to the 2nd. Okay? Because remember, you multiply the 2 and the 2, so that gives you v to the 4th. Okay? Now, this is not factored because I'm subtracting. I have to be multiplying to be factored. So remember from a couple weeks ago how I write my final answer?
Is it going to be... Actually...
You do something with the 5q and the v squared.
Oh, you run a negative, right?
No?
No?
You add them. So 5q plus v squared. And then you do what? Subtract them. So when you have a difference of perfect squares, you take the two things in parentheses and you add them and you subtract them. And then that's your final answer. And this is why we're reviewing, because it's been a couple weeks. Let's go to example 1, because we kind of struggled to remember example 5. Or example 4. Let's look at example 4. M squared minus 100. There's two terms. GCF.
Where are we at?
Example 4. M squared minus 100. Do it? No, we're skipping some, but I want to go back and do 4. M squared minus 100. GCF? Nope. There's a difference. There's two terms. Difference. Can I write each as something squared? What squared gives me m squared?
10.
What squared gives me 100?
10.
10. This is not factored because it has to be something times something. So my final answer is
M plus 10.
m plus 10, m minus 10. It doesn't matter the order. Okay? So just a quick refresher. Difference of perfect squares. If you're two terms, that's what you want to look at. If you have three terms, if you have a trinomial, let's go ahead and write this up. Two terms is called a binomial, just because we can. So two terms is a binomial. Three terms is called a trinomial. Right in the middle. So if there are three terms, if you have a trinomial, you have two choices to choose from. And I have the two arrows. So I try to make this so that it's easy to read. So first one, is there a positive 1 in front of x squared? So you ask, is there a positive 1 in front of x squared? Which basically means is x squared alone. If you want to put that here, is x squared alone? That's the same thing. If that's easier for you to think about. Either way you want to think about it, it's fine. Okay. If x squared is alone, you want to find two numbers that multiply to get the last number and add to get the middle number. And if you want to put this step right before it, so that helps you remember you have to start with two parentheses and put x's in front, you can do that. So if x squared is alone, you start with your two parentheses, put x's in front, and then you have to say what two numbers multiply to get the last and add to get the middle. So let's look at example 7. We'll look at 7. We'll look at a couple of these. Okay. So I look at example 7. Is there a GCF? No. So there's nothing to bring out front like the warm-up. So then we say, okay, how many terms does it have? 3. It's a trinomial. So then you have to ask yourself, is x squared, or in this case, is m squared alone? Yeah. Is there a positive 1 in front?
Yeah.
Yes. So then we know we can do the easy way, or the short way. Two parentheses, put m's in front. So you can use that shortcut only if it's a trinomial with the x squared alone, or the m squared alone. I need to find two numbers that multiply to give me what?
21.
Negative 21. And add to give me 4. So what are some numbers that multiply to give me negative 21?
Negative 7 and 3.
Yep, 7 and negative 3. It has to be a positive 7 because it has to add to get me a positive 4. So positive 7 times a negative 3 multiplies to give me negative 21, adds to give me 4. And is this factored? Is it two things being multiplied? Yes, so it is factored. So that's your final answer. Okay, let's look at example 9. H squared minus 14h plus 33. GCF? No. How many terms? 3. 1 in front of h squared. Is h squared alone? Yes. So we can start with my two parentheses, put h's in front.
Minus 11 and minus 3.
Okay. I need to find two numbers that multiply to give me 33 and add to give me negative 14.
Negative 11, negative 3.
Negative 11 and negative 3. They have to multiply to get a positive, so they both have to be positive or negative. But to add to get a negative, they both have to be negative. That's your final answer. Again, these should kind of look familiar to you. We're just kind of reviewing and talking about how you decide how to do which one. Yep, we're going to have a review worksheet. Okay, now the second trinomial way. So if I have a trinomial, the second arrow, is there not a positive 1 in front of x squared? Is there a number in front? Any number. Is there a number in front of x squared? I'll put that down here. Number in front of x squared besides 1. So technically 1 is a number in front, but you know what I mean. Is there a number besides 1 in front of x squared? These are the 4 steps. Again, you will be able to use this for the quiz Friday. So I'm trying to give you like help, but you still have to have a basic idea how to do this.
What we just did.
Huh? Yes. Yep. But we're just going through. First step. Multiply the first and last numbers. Step 2. Actually, we'll do that once we'll go through the 4 steps once we do it. We're going to do 10. We might do both. We'll see. Let's look at example 10. 4t squared minus 8t plus 3. 4 and 8 have a GCF, but the 3 screws it up. So there's no GCF. So I notice it's a trinomial. There's a 4 in front of the t squared. So I'm going to have to do it the long way. I can't do the shortcut with the 2 parentheses and t's in front. First step. Multiply what 2 numbers? 4 and 3, which gives you 12. That's the first step. And I'm reading the steps to the left. The first step says multiply the first and the last numbers. Step 2, find 2 numbers that multiply to get what? 12. And add to get the middle number, which is negative 8. So we need to go through and we need to find 2 numbers that multiply to give you 12 and add to get you negative 8. They have to multiply to get you a positive, but add to get a negative. The signs are going to be both negative. Negative 6 and negative 2 are the 2 numbers. So the 2 numbers are negative 6 and negative 2. They multiply to give you a positive 12. They add to get you negative 8. Now, you don't have to show these 2 steps. I don't care if you don't write them down, if you do them in your head. But I'm going to put them in the notes so you know where I'm getting numbers from. Now, step 3. I take those 2 numbers, and what do I do with them? Place them in the middle. So 4t squared minus 6t minus 2t plus 3. Doesn't matter the order. Negative 2 could come first, but you have to put a t because it has to replace the negative 8t. Logan, stay with me, please. Logan, stay with me. He's not. Okay, now, once I have 4 terms, how do I always factor something with 4 terms? Grouping. So we group the first 2 together and the second 2 together. Yes, sir.
Can you switch those around?
The 2 and the 6?
Yeah.
Yes, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
They're the same answer.
Alright.
Okay, GCF of 4t squared minus 6t.
Negative 2t.
I would just do a positive 2.
Alright.
Positive 2t.
Alright.
If I take out a positive 2t, what is left?
2t minus
2t minus 3. Now the second part, I have a negative 2t plus 3. I notice I have the same numbers, but what's different?
3. Different variables.
Signs. The signs are different. So what can I factor out that will switch the signs?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. So if I factor out a negative 1 times a positive 2t gives me a negative 2t. A negative 1 times a negative 3 gives me a positive 3. So that switches the sign for me. Kind of. What's my final answer?
2t minus 1.
And 2t minus 3. So you take what's outside and put it in 1. 2t minus 1. And what's on the inside, you put into 1.
Wow. I feel like we were looking at this a lot different. Yeah.
It's the same thing. No, it's the same. On the video, it's the same. That's okay. But yeah, that's okay. That's why we're reviewing. So it's fine. Okay. Let's do 11 real quick. I want to make sure we understand. Let's do 11 real quick. I know, but again, you're going to be able to use it on the quiz. So one more example is not going to hurt. Okay. Let's look at example 11. Okay, again, 12, 20, and 3, there is no GCF. So I move on and I say it's a trinomial. Is there a number in front of p squared? Obviously, there's a 12 there. Don, keep your head up. Write this down, please. Okay, First step, 12 times 3, 36. So 12 times 3, 36. Again, you don't have to write that step down, but I'm going to put it in the notes so you see where I'm getting numbers from. Second step, two numbers that multiply to give me 36 and add to give you negative 20. No. What else multiplies to give you 18? Or give you 36? They have to multiply to give me 36.
18 and 2?
Yeah, because I just said 18. Negative 18
Negative 18.
and negative 2. Okay? Those two numbers multiply to get a positive 36, but they add to give me negative 20. What do I do with negative 18 and negative 2?
You put them in.
For the...
You replace them for negative 20p.
Yep, replace the middle. So 12p squared minus 18p minus 2p plus 3. Again, the order you put them in doesn't matter. If you would put negative 2p first and then negative 18p, your answer will be the same. Now I have four terms. Whenever you have four terms, you always factor by grouping.
Yeah.
So if I group the first two, GCF for 12 and 18, 6, P,
Parentheses. 2 minus.
okay, just a second. 6 times what gives me 12? 2, and I have a P left. 6P times what gives me negative 18P? Negative 3. Okay, similar to the 10, I have negative 2P plus 3, so what can I factor out? Negative 1. That will give me 2P minus 3. Final answer, 6P minus 1, 2P minus 3. Okay, those are by far the trickiest. Okay, that's why we spent 3 days on them and then we reviewed them again today. Okay, any questions on those two? Now let's look at four terms. So, we did 2 terms. Listen up. We did 2 terms. We did 3 terms. Now we do 4 terms. So if you do 4 terms, you always do factoring by grouping.
Oh, that, it just instantly starts with that?
Yep, unless there's a GCF.
A step, right?
Yep. So factor by grouping if you have 4 terms. Now, if you have a GCF, you still have to factor it out. So if I look at example, is there a GCF for 6,
10, 3, and 5? No. They all don't have an X. They all don't have a Y. So we can't take out an X or Y. So GCF says you are going to group the first 2 together and the second 2. So you're going to take the GCF out of the first 2, take the GCF out of the first 2, and then you're going to take out a common parenthesis, or just take out the parenthesis part and write what's left. GCF for 6 and 10, 2. They share an X. Lowest exponent is X to the first, so I take out a 2X.
3x.
Okay. 2, just a second. 2 times what gives me 6? 3. I took out an X, so it's 3X.
Minus 5y.
Minus the 5. 2 times 5, and I took out the X, so I have a 5y left. Okay, second 2. 3xy minus 5y squared. GCF?
Plus y.
Yep, we can take out a y. Okay? 3 and 5 don't share anything, and they don't have an x, they only share a y, and the lowest exponent is y to the first. So that's just going to be a y. If I take out what is left,
It's gonna be 3x minus
you're fine.
5y.
Okay? So, I started with 3xy, I took out the y, I have a 3x left. I started with negative 5y squared, I took out a y, so it's just negative 5y. Your parentheses will always end up being the same when you do grouping. So then the last thing you do is you take out the common parenthesis. So you take out the 3x minus 5. What is left?
2x plus y.
2x plus y. And that's your final answer. Okay.
Bruh.
Any questions?
Down.
Listen up. We're not going to do example 13 because we already factored by grouping in the last examples before this. We just did it as part of the problem.
Never mind.
Now, let's look at 13 real quick. Sorry.
Let's do it.
Sorry, let's look at 13.
Yeah, that's what I was about to
Yes.
ask.
So 13 has a GCF, so it's good practice. So as I look at 13, listen up. This will take a minute, so stay with
You
me.
just run it all the way through it.
So, okay, as I look at example 13, there is a GCF. So my GCF
2x to the second.
is 2x to the second. So I can take 2x to the second out of all four. So you take the GCF, you bring it out front. Then you have to look at what is left. Okay? Look at your first term. I take out a 2. I took out x squared, so I'm going to have x to the third left.
Yeah. Plus 2x squared
Okay?
minus 2x minus 4x.
No, just 4.
4.
on the,
Okay?
four.
So I took a 2x squared out. There was actually a GCF for this one. So I'm left with an x cubed, a 2x squared, a minus 2x, and a minus 4. So I took a 2x squared and I'm left with this. Now, you have to look at what's left. Listen up, guys. Look at what is left, and let's see if I can factor by grouping. Because I noticed I have 4 terms. What's, guys? Shh. Okay, I have 4 terms in the parentheses, so I'm going to leave the 2x squared till the end. I'll put it on at the end. X cubed and 2x squared, GCF?
X squared,
Yeah,
X squared.
parenthesis x plus 2.
Okay, I will have an x plus 2 left. And then what can I take out of negative 2x minus 4?
2. Or negative.
Negative 2. That will give me an x. Negative 2 times what gives me negative 4?
Plus 2.
Plus 2.
Then it's what?
Guys,
2x
shh.
squared?
Dallas. Shh.
I stopped saying stuff.
Okay, whoever's making weird noises. Okay, so,
I erase it.
shh. Final answer. X plus 2, x squared minus 2,
And then 2x squared.
and you have to have the 2x squared. So if you have a GCF, you just take it out and do the same thing. Okay?
Yeah. I just sat here like this and did my phone.
I will.
Well, I was just sat here like this.
Because I didn't care. It didn't have a motivation. I gotta get this done.
We
We're not handling
stuck
this by
with
each other,
those.
guys.
Well, there's children.
I don't know if you guys can handle this by each other.
You learned to
Okay.
We do pretty good.
Okay, guys, listen up, please, real quick. So, if you guys listen up, please. Okay, if you look, these are all review, and they are categorized by the different types. This one still kind of breaks it up into the different types. Thursday, when we look at all of them, they're all going to be mixed, and you have to decide which way to do it. Okay? Friday. Okay.
What's tomorrow?
So, Study Island.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Thursday.
So, 24 questions, which is all review, so they shouldn't take as long. Guys.
So are you not giving us an hour to say this week?
Okay. 24 questions. They should not take as long as they did the first time we did them because these are all review. Okay? So make sure you look for a GCF